Hi. So today we're going to do a really quick exercise in taste, and we're going to explore the 5 tastes that we have on our tongue. Now, taste is different from flavor. Flavor is a combination of taste and aroma, and maybe appearance and texture as well. But generally, when you eat food, you taste food with the tongue, you experience flavor with the aroma and the taste kind of combined. So today is just about taste. Today is just about the experience that we have with food on our tongue. And there are 5 tastes that we're going to be looking at. We're going to be looking at salt, sweet, sour, bitter, and another one called umami, which I might have mentioned to my class. Umami is kind of a savory flavor, which is not salty, it's not sweet, it's not any of those other ones. Umami is a little bit harder to pin down, so we're going to go through all these tastes and try to kind of use a process of elimination to experience umami. So what you need for this experiment is some ingredients that I have here. I've got some salt, I've got some sugar, I've got some lemon. If you don't have lemon, you can also use white vinegar, not balsamic, just white vinegar. I've got some tea, which is really strong. So you can see I've got 4 tea bags in there, and I've let that steep for a little bit so you can see how dark it is. And make sure that that's really strong, that's important. And we've just got plain old tomato sauce. Okay, so let's go through these together. I'll give you a second to collect those ingredients, pause the video if you have to, and then we're going to go through this process together. All right, let's start with the basics, the things that we are familiar with. Start with salt and sweet. Now, salt is something that we know because we're used to eating salty foods, especially junk food is pretty salty. If you've had potato chips before, if you've been to the beach and you've got water in your mouth, you know what salt tastes like. So if you just grab a little piece of salt and put it on your tongue, you don't need too much, and you can experience saltiness. Again, it's something that we're familiar with. It's a pleasant flavor. It's something that we enjoy. But when there's too much of it, it can be quite intense. So what you'll notice if you have a lot of salt is that you get a lot of saliva in your mouth. And the saliva comes in there to kind of dilute that salt and spread it out so it's not so intense. So we get that salty taste covering our entire mouth. Okay, so we should be familiar with salt. Next, let's look at sugar. So you can use any sugar here. I've got caster sugar, but you can use white sugar or raw sugar or brown sugar. And this is another taste that we should be familiar with. So just put a little bit of sugar on your tongue. And it's a pleasant flavor. It's something that we enjoy because we eat lollies, we eat cake, we eat chocolate. The reason why humans are evolved to enjoy sweet things is because our cave person ancestors wouldn't have been able to go down to the shops and buy a Mars bar. So if they ate things that had a high nutritional value, like a piece of fruit, for example, it tasted delicious and it meant that that was going to be good for them. Nowadays, we can just buy sugar all over the place. So that's why we have a problem with people being overweight, because we're getting too much energy in our diets. So we're familiar with salt, we're familiar with sweet. Let's go with sour. Now, sour generally means that something is acidic. It's got acid in it. This lemon here has got citric acid in it. Vinegar has acetic acid in it. So sour is sharp, it's acidic. And normally when you taste sour food, what happens to my face is what happens to you. It's kind of, you get this puckered face because of that acidity, because of that sharpness. It's kind of like sharp in the way that it's not round, it's very kind of harsh, right? Some people don't enjoy that. Some people enjoy it in moderation. We do like sour food, for example, a salad dressing. We want some kind of acidity in there. Or sometimes sourness and sweetness work really well together because they balance each other out. But that's what sourness is. Again, it's another taste that kind of can make your juices flow, to make your saliva run, because it's just trying to dilute that taste in your mouth so it's not so intense. Okay, next we have bitter. Now, bitterness tends to be a taste that we find unpleasant, and the reason is because a lot of poisonous food is bitter, or food that has been allowed to spoil, it's gone rotten, it has a bitterness to it. So bitterness is kind of nature's way of saying don't eat that. We can kind of enjoy bitter foods in moderation, especially as we get older. Wine and beer have bitterness to them, and so as adults you can kind of become accustomed to those things. Younger kids really find that unpleasant. So bitterness is unpleasant. It's not a pleasant sensation. When you taste bitterness, it kind of gives you a harshness on the back of the throat, which is it's kind of it's like a tablet. If you eat a tablet without swallowing it, that's bitterness, and it kind of makes you cringe a little bit. It's an unpleasant taste. Okay, so the tastes that we've learnt so far: sweet, salt, sour, bitter. Let's think about umami. Now, like I said before, umami is like a savory taste. There's umami in cheese, especially Parmesan cheese. There's a lot of umami in Japanese cooking, and that's where that word comes from, Japan, because it was a Japanese scientist that came up with that word. Tomato sauce is a great one to understand the tastes, because tomato sauce tends to have all of those tastes combined. But what we need to do is we need to taste this objectively, because most of you guys would eat tomato sauce a lot, right? And you would know it, you'd be very familiar with it. So we need to kind of taste this objectively. Don't think of it as tomato sauce. Think of it just as those 5 tastes. So just taste a little bit. The first things you'll experience is sweetness. And if you think about it, there's saltiness to it as well. All right, so we know that there's sweet and salty in there as well. There's not much bitterness, but there's a little bit of sourness, depending on the brand of tomato sauce that you're having as well. Some will be more sour than others, but there's a little bit of kind of acidity in there as well. Okay, so what I want you to do is strike those things from your brain. Get rid of sweetness, get rid of salty, get rid of sour, get rid of bitterness, and just think about what's left. Now let me ask you a question. Can you taste tomato in tomato sauce? Now, there's a tomato flavor in there, but it's not like fresh tomatoes. In fact, it's quite far removed from fresh tomatoes. It's probably more of a cooked tomato flavor, and fresh tomatoes and cooked tomatoes taste different because of how the food breaks down. But that tomato flavor has a lot of umami taste, all right? It's that savory thing that's not salty, and it's not any of those other tastes. It's a savory taste. Try that again. And that's what makes tomato sauce so delicious, because that savory taste, and because it's got a balance of all those other tastes in there as well. So those are the 5 tastes, and you'll know that moving forward for when you perform sensory analyses in the future.